right, everybody, welcome in. This is Your Fielder's Choice, Coffees, Corners, and Clean Sheets, brought to you by YFC. My name is Adam, also known as at YFC Sports 312, and I'm joined by this amazing soccer guru here at Riley Pick 345, Riley Drexler. Riley, what's up, man? How are you?
Hey, how's it going? Doing well. We got getting ready for another weekend here. We have a 4-game slate. These are my personal favorites. We don't have to deal with any Big Six clubs and big chalk and things like that. So I'm excited to talk about this one for sure.
Yeah, and guys, we're definitely going to focus in on this 4 games. You can expect this video around 30 minutes or so, but we're going to be digging in by position. We're going to be talking about, just some plays, maybe a little bit of stacking and how we want to approach the slate. If you haven't played Premier League soccer before, be sure to check out, any of the articles at yourfielderschoice.com that come out from Riley. There's a free Discord, which we can try to go ahead and make sure the soccer channel is free. However, a lot of our content that we do have is premium. So if you haven't signed up at yourfielderschoice.com, we have a promo going on right now. It's $25, half off what you normally would pay per month to be able to jump on in. So man, I'm ready to jump in, get pumped about EPL. Obviously, you and I, we know this is the time of year, especially with, you got World Cup soccer coming around. COVID changed things a little bit on scheduling, but this is a great time to jump in on soccer content. Riley, this is going to be an interesting slate. I would say from last week, give me a quick recap of how you felt like EPL started out. Is it what you expected, just for those guys that are playing with us and people that are new?
Yeah, it's kind of been a business as usual. We really haven't seen, the one thing I've been looking for is the sub rule. Hasn't necessarily been a huge impact quite yet. I think it will though eventually.
Right.
But in general, it's kind of like we can talk about last week. It was kind of, I think, what we expected. City had guys who scored a ton of points, but there were some goals elsewhere on the slate. I think we pointed out, especially Jesus. We talked about him quite a bit. He ended up being the top scorer by, I think, 10 points or so. But I just think in general, it's kind of been the same, but we'll keep watching because I do think eventually that sub rule is going to be a huge impact. So we'll definitely watch that. But yeah, I think I'll just jump right into it. We can start with forwards. So, I think on the show, we're just going to talk. We're going to go position by position. That's easiest. We have 4 games, so there's a couple ways to go. But yeah, I think really, especially when you start forward, I'm looking at 4 guys here. I think you can kind of put them in a bucket. I see them all pretty much the same, and a lot of it can come down to, what game you think is going to have goals or what team you like. Zaha 8.9K, Tony 8K, Watkins 8.1K, and Mitrovic at 8K.
Yeah.
You have 4 guys. I think all of them are probably going to get 90 minutes. They're all going to be in striking role. All of them have penalty duties, so there's really not any difference, I think, between them. It's really just who do you think is going to score. Zaha obviously scored against Liverpool. We've all seen it. Well, Watkins hasn't scored yet, but he did have 2 assists. So, I think they all kind of have their own equity, and the prices are fair for all of them. Personally, if I had to pick, I'm going to go here with Tony at 8K. I just, I kind of like the matchup here for them. I think he's really just an underrated player.
Right.
He really is in a good spot here. And, I like Zaha, just 8.9K. I think it's a little tough when you have some kind of midfielders that we'll talk about later that you can kind of get for the same price. But, I think if we're starting with strikers, I'll say my favorite's Tony, but I'm not going to fault anyone for playing all 4 of those. I mean, it's just, to me, they're all kind of interchangeable.
Yeah, I mean, kind of looking at the forward pool, I definitely would say there's not this obvious, like, man, you just absolutely have to play this guy. There's nobody. I think the biggest favorite on the slate looks like Leicester right now, and I'm getting him about around like a negative 120, 121. I don't know if there's I think that the first game, it looks like that they're probably the biggest favorite on the slate. So with it being relatively close in a lot of pick'em style environments here, and I think with Leicester, Jamie Vardy obviously is going to be somebody a lot of people are going to look at. If you are a game log watcher and you're just like, well, I'm looking at just recency, you're definitely not going to be playing Jamie Vardy. But I do think it's reassuring not having any forwards over that 9K range, where we were Manchester City roulette this last week and we had, 11K for Holland, and then you got, a couple other pay ups, and you were absolutely spot on with your Arsenal call. Jesus was just money for you. And I think that's an amazing call. But I think I'll approach it as maybe somebody with a little bit more of a floor, and you can't really go by this 2-game sample slate. You have to kind of know who has set pieces, who has corners, especially for DraftKings scoring with the crosses and things like that. Fouls drawn, a lot of these things are going to accrue points, so the floors are going to be a lot different there. I definitely am looking at Zaha at the top there. He is 8,900. That's pretty expensive. You kind of feel like it has to be an assist or some goal involvement to pay that salary out. But Jamie Vardy right there, 8,500, absolutely. He's probably the likely to score. If he's going to be scoring, I'm not sure what the goal odds are come Saturday, but he should be right up there. So that kind of talking about that range, I really like that Ivan Toney call. I think that nobody ever plays enough Ivan Toney. You play more than enough Ivan Toney, and it usually pays you off here. So that's your up top. What are you looking at kind of in the mid range?
Yeah, so there's a couple mid range. I think there's a few different ways to go. I'll start off with one guy. I think it looks like he's going to start, but I'm just looking at some stats this morning, and he's actually second in the entire EPL in shots on target. I know it's early, so take it with a grain of salt, but Joe Rebo is 4.2K for Southampton, and I know you're talking about the betting lines here. Leicester Southampton is highest expected goal total. Southampton's quite an underdog here. I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't really see a big difference between these two teams.
Right.
I wouldn't trust any of them against any big clubs, but they do actually have a knack for scoring goals. Southampton had 2, and then they scored against Tottenham. Leicester, they scored 2 against Brentford, and they actually scored 2 against Arsenal last week. So I think this game should see a fair amount of offense, even if there's only 2 or 3 goals. I think there's going to be a lot of shots. So I think Aribo at 4.2K, I think that's crazy discount. If you're playing cash, he's probably going to be high owned just because he fits.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I think you have to look at him, or at least start with him, just because of that price. I think it's good value. But a couple other guys I'm going to look at. I'm going to look at Brendan Johnson at 5.3K for Forest.
Okay.
He had a goal, I think, last week. It was called off, but it's a really nice open play goal. He's going to be involved in a lot of offense. He should get a full 92. So definitely someone I'm looking at, and kind of staying in the same game. I'm going to look at Anthony Gordon at 7.4K too.
Yeah, for Everton.
So they're really kind of playing a false 9. They don't really have a striker, and it's shown because their offense hasn't been so good, but this is definitely a favorable matchup for them. So I think if I'm going to look at someone to score, it's probably going to be him. But there's a couple other guys. Ings, Mbeo for Brentford.
Sure.
There's a couple ways to go, but I think number one with the Rebo, the value is probably too much for me to pass up. So I think I'll be pretty heavy on him, and then just kind of filter in with some other guys.
Yeah, because Stuart Armstrong is definitely not a number 9. I don't know. They have him always slated to start up at the top. Aribo would obviously be the guy that would drift up top, in that maybe Che Adams or whatever. He might be hurt now that I'm thinking about it. But, yeah, I definitely like that. I know Calvert-Lewin is hurt for Everton. What I will say, just from an ownership standpoint, is if for some reason Kaleki and Iheanacho, oh, man, that's always a tough one for me to say. But for Leicester, if for some reason he was to start, you can absolutely bet he will be chalk at 5,200. With Leicester being a home favorite there. And, like you said, it's a high goal total. We will see some goals there, but at 5,200, he's extremely underpriced. He hasn't really played, full minutes and anything like that. So that's something definitely to keep an eye on. And then, what I will say is just kind of like, I'll keep beating the Fulham drum. I feel like I wasn't too far off this last week. I think that Fulham, does have some very good DFS plays, and that anytime you play Wolverhampton, it can definitely suppress your DFS potential. They tend to play a lot of possession defensive style. So, they didn't really open anything up. They weren't attacking either. So it was very weird. Like they were playing for a draw whenever I saw highlights in some of the game. But I think that Fulham, absolutely, we talked about Mitrovic, but, you talked about Bobby Cordova-Reed this last week. He's definitely somebody to consider. And, even in that same light, from the Fulham camp, you have other guys that could possibly, fill in, start up top. I know Ivan Cavallero is somebody to look at, but they're going to have a lot more plays down the line in the midfield and defender spots. So that's a good segue. Midfielder, I think that's where you're going to see a lot more of your chalk plays this week. You're going to have some guys that are necessary in cash games. I'm going to give you obviously my favorite and probably who's going to be the highest owned guy, but I do think on the other side there's a very good argument for Ward-Prowse, but I think James Madison, I'll just talk a little bit about him. I'll just lead into what the obvious is. 220 plus point DK showings, actually 22.6, 22.8. The guys, he fills it up with crosses, shots assisted. He's the ideal DFS player on the DraftKings scoring chart. He's just the kind of guy like a Kevin De Bruyne or James Madison's going to play 90. He's going to play up top. He's going to dominate set pieces, free kicks, and whatnot. I get it. He's 10.2. I think that he's absolutely affordable on this slate because you don't have any Manchester City prices. So he's the obvious here. I want you to tell me about Ward-Prowse, but I know that there's a lot of midfield plays. So who are you liking? And tell me, I guess, start if you do like Ward-Prowse or not here.
Yeah, so I kind of broke them up into 3 categories, just, filter it out. 3 top guys. I have Madison, obviously. I think you'd be insane not to play him, especially in cash. He'll be very high owned, like you said, and he just makes a lot of sense. Ward-Prowse, I like too a lot, 8.7. He kind of actually gave us a dud last week. I played a lot of him, and he was pretty disappointing to me.
Okay.
But I don't, I'm not scared off him because he's still going to get all the sets, and he'll get a full 90. He'll get everything here. So definitely not going to be afraid to play him after last week. Another guy too, I have to look at, I think I'm putting in that range is going to be Easy at 7.6K. I mean, he's been getting full 90. He's been taking all the sets. He's kind of replaced that Conor Gallagher role, and he's really thrived. He's given us a really high floor, and I think he has assist and goal potential. So, and Crystal Palace, they've looked pretty decent. They've played, probably 2 of the 4 best teams in the league. So I think you have to look at him at 7.6K. I'll probably play a lot of him here. And then I kind of looked at some kind of cash plays here. I think guys with high floors, but I don't necessarily see maybe the high ceiling. I think you have to look at Dwight McNeil at 7.9K, Jensen 5.8K, Pereira 5K. I think all 3 of these guys, they should get corner kicks. Do I see a lot of goals or something like that from them? Not necessarily, but if things break, great. But I think all of them are viable in cash because they'll probably give you double digits. I think if everything goes well. And then I'll just kind of touch on some GPP pieces here. I think these guys do have maybe some offense potential. That's going to be Ramsey for Villa at 4.2K, Reed 5.2K for Fulham, De Silva 5.5K for Brentford, and Damsgaard, if he does play, is going to be 5.5K for Brentford as well. And then Tielemans for Leicester at 4.2K. So one guy I really want to touch on is De Silva at 5.5K. He's actually scored twice. He really seems to be a really solid offensive option here. I think he's just way too cheap here in a game that I do expect some offense because I like Fulham's offense, I like Brentford's offense. If Brentford's games have gotten out of control, I'm not sure if that's really going to last, but I think you have to look at him here. I mean, Jensen, he's going to take corners for them, so he's priced pretty fairly. But I think if I'll definitely probably have a Brentford stack with Jensen, Tony, De Silva, and the other guy I mentioned, Damsgaard, 5.5K. If he gets a start, I think he'll be really under-owned, but he's a guy I really like that I've followed for a couple of years, so definitely be in play. But yeah, those are my 3 tiers really in midfield.
Yeah, definitely. Just to kind of piggyback on that. So Damsgaard is a up and coming young budding star for their international team. he is definitely somebody I think that Denmark is, because they had Christian Eriksen all these years really leading, that midfield, and Damsgaard just came in and just had a phenomenal Nations League, and he's somebody that jumped on the scene. Obviously, that's a big get by Brentford. I think a lot of people that only play Premier League will have no idea who the guy is, but there's a reason why he's priced up where he's at. Like, I mean, he's based off of recent performances. If he's in there, and I get it, Brentford 4-0 Manchester United. Like, we can talk about that all day long until we're red in the face. But the reality is that they're probably going to use some subs here, but I think they were more liberal with that because they had a 4-goal lead and they wanted to get guys play time, which is completely understandable. But he's absolutely somebody to look at. One other play I do want to mention, because I think that this is going to really lean me with so many good midfield plays. I'm probably going to be playing 3 on DraftKings. You have the utility spot, so you can definitely play a midfielder down there. But I want to talk about real quick Emiliano Buendia, Aston Villa. 8K, I think, is way too cheap for him. I know that you didn't really mention him, but you're familiar with him, obviously. When he came over from Getafe to Norwich City back in, I think it was 2018, he played about 3 years-ish over at Norwich. And when he came on, people knew he had some talent, but he really showed out. EFL helped him get promoted into EPL, played at EPL at a high level, and then he got transferred over from a loan, and then eventually a $47 million transfer fee over to Aston Villa. So there's money that's invested in Buendia. He's slated to start here. I think that he's going to always play that cam role, that number 10. And it looks like here is if he's slated to start, they're not usually going to play him and Philip Coutinho together. But I think with Buendia really showing out, he only had, I think, 45. So he had a half at Bournemouth and then 30 minutes at Everton. I mean, the guy can fill it up here. I mean, he had 18.1. Obviously, he did score that goal, 2 shots on goal, 3 shots assisted, 1 cross. He is going to dominate set pieces probably here for Villa with maybe Lucas Digne, maybe John McGinn, Matty Cash, all kind of pitching in here. But Buendia, he's an attack-minded, advanced player. So he's always going to be looking and hunting for goals and being involved in goals as well. So at 8K, I really like that play. I think that the game log kind of spikes with that goal. It's, it doesn't, it's going to level out. And I think that he's going to be somebody that we're really going to like here. And I also want to mention you had Johan Wiesa. I never really paid too much attention to him, but him in Brentford, I think that you kind of talked about him a lot. And I really think he should be highlighted. 6,500 is expected to play essentially a striker type role, maybe alongside Tony and Bueno, depending on how they line up. He's definitely somebody that we can look at. And there's cheaper plays as we go down. I'm always going to talk about my guy, KDH, Dewsbury Hall for Leicester City. I think there's a lot of talent there. I mean, he got 90 minutes his last time out against Arsenal, but I mean, if you watch the game, they were getting beat up. So he didn't really get to shine. Arsenal is a lot better than people think this year. I know our guy Gervais is really going to like hearing that. I hate saying it personally as a Chelsea fan, but I think he is. And then, last, like you said, you covered Pereira. I do want to mention one before we go to defender. Neeskens Kambano for Fulham is expected to start. I mentioned him last week. He did not start. However, whenever he was playing on an EFL team that was Fulham, he was very involved, cross-minded. I mean, he played on the 13th here, 83 minutes against Wolves, 5 crosses, 2 shots, 6.8 DraftKings points. It wasn't probably the ideal performance here, but at 4,700, he's definitely in GPP territory there. Anything else on midfield that you want to mention before we move on?
No, yeah, we can move on to defense.
Awesome, man. Okay, so where do you want to start? I'm assuming it's at the top. There's a lot of good premier pay-up plays here. Who's your favorite right now at the top?
Yeah, if I'm going to pay up, I'm going to pay for Nico Williams at 5.7K. I still think maybe his price isn't necessarily adjusted. He absolutely dominated against West Ham, and I think Everton is obviously not as quality as them. So, yeah, he's going to get a bunch of set pieces. He's an offensive threat, so he's definitely going to be the guy I'm paying up for, and I will pay up for him a lot. But I do think there's a couple other good options. I'm not going to pay for Lucas Digne. I know he's solid.
He's too expensive, man.
Yeah, I think he's a little too expensive. I'm going to look at Kyle Walker-Peters at 5.1K, Rico Henry 5.2K, then a couple guys maybe in the 4,000s range. I think you have to look at Patterson on Everton here. He's going to be very upfront. He's only 4.2K. And then I like Tyreek Mitchell on Crystal Palace, 4.3K, always a solid option. And then for Fulham, I'm going to look at Robinson at 4.5K. I'm going to probably stick to that group. I know there's a couple other options around there, but yeah, really, really going to focus here on Williams and Patterson. I think Patterson is in a really good spot here for Everton, especially. I think. And one thing I mentioned about these defenders, a lot of them, you don't really have to worry about getting subbed off. So
Right.
I give them a little bump up in value just because of that. And maybe other people haven't, formulated that yet, but I do think it's very important to get the full 90. And we are going to see those subs start to come. I don't know which week it's going to be, but
it's coming, right?
It's coming. So, better to be prepared, I guess, than, not be prepared. But yeah, I really think Nico Williams is a great play, 5.7K. I mean, he, if you just look past the defender spot, if you remove a position, I think he's one of the best plays on the slate, dollar for dollar.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that Nico, I mean, obviously former, Liverpool player, great for his national team, was a starring role on the Wales team, obviously. I will say, if you're talking about just a floor standpoint, Rico Henry for Brentford has consistently produced. He's always going to be out there on the wing. He generally plays a full 90 for them. Sends in crosses. It's involved in, goal opportunities and whatnot. So his DraftKings average, I think right now, it's 8.8. That's probably what you can expect from him. Obviously, there's goal and assist upside there, probably more assist upside than anything, but he's definitely somebody to consider. I think that you're right. Patterson, to me, is probably going to be the best point per dollar play that I'm seeing, because I think the main thing is that the Everton plays their fullbacks pretty high. So they're essentially wingbacks at that point. And, that I think you're right. He's probably going to be the guy. Kyle Walker-Peters is going to be high owned too, I think, at 5,100. I mean, he did have that goal, a couple of shots, but he's definitely he's growing into that role. He kind of flopped out at Tottenham and went in, found new life, got transferred midseason, and he's in a great spot here. Southampton has a role for him there, so I think that I really like Walker-Peters here, man. I think honestly, and this I could be wrong, but this seems like a slate where you could play one fullback and kind of reach down there and grab a center back of your choice. There's some, I talked about the Southampton guys, obviously, Bednarik and whatnot, depending on who starts there, Stevens, Lienko, but I think that Southampton and Brentford are both two teams that really have solid center backs, that they're cheap and you can definitely look that way, but I don't think it's a necessary thing here. I will say we need to keep an eye out. Wesley Fofana, and hopefully from a Chelsea fan standpoint, he's on the verge of getting a transfer there. If Fofana does get moved or doesn't play on Saturday or is not starting, that means for me probably that he's about to get transferred. So with that being said, he's one of the most talented young center backs in the league. And if he's not in that back line for Leicester, that spells trouble for them. And then that really makes me like Southampton. Who's starting is just as important in EPL as who's not sometimes. And you just have to look at that if they have a makeshift back line, these guys are playing at such a high level that it can absolutely flip the game upside down. So yeah, all that being said, a little bit of game theory there for you guys. I'm going to let Riley lead out here on goalkeeper. I've always just kind of decided who is the least likely to hurt me here. So who are you picking? You tend to have a goalie whisperer mindset here. So I'll kind of let you lead out and see what you're thinking.
Yeah, this one is pretty tough for me. I think I mentioned everyone I mentioned. I kind of had someone from every team offensively. So there's not really a standout team that I would fade. I guess if I had to pick one, I'll probably land on Brentford's goalie. I think I'll have a couple Brentford stacks here with maybe 3 or 4 guys and just have a goalie in there for hope everything's breaks right. But yeah, I wish I had a better goalie pick this week, but I don't. I think I might do a couple mixing. I'll go with Brentford will be my top choice, and then I'll go with Giata on Crystal Palace. So that's those are my final thoughts there.
Yeah. If I had to just pick a guy based off of talent, Dean Henderson's probably my guy for Nottingham Forest. Manchester United guy, he should be starting, in my opinion, over David De Gea. But, needless to say, he finds himself here starting for a really good, much better than I thought, Nottingham Forest team. And this Forest team, they're going to allow shots on goal. Everton's going to be slightly favored. I think that you could play a Dean Henderson and still play on this slate an Everton piece, especially if you're playing Jamie Vardy and you're trying to get penalty kicks or whatever it is. I'm sorry, that's the wrong team, Leicester. Especially if you're playing like an Anthony Gordon is what I meant to say. But I think that Dean Henderson here, because the more that I look at it, I'm really like leaning to where if I do play Everton, it may be a one-off play, it may be a Patterson play, or I might go ahead and throw in. We didn't really talk about Damari Gray or Dwight McNeil. You mentioned and you talked about Gordon, but Gray's also a really good piece. Everton's just not playing very well right now. So, Patterson I like a lot. I think that you could play Henderson in cash, and 4,400 is not going to break the bank. He's going to see plenty of save opportunities. He allowed 2 goals against Newcastle, but had 7 saves and still managed 10.3 DraftKings points. And that's losing 2-0. So, the way that you have to approach it is every save equals a goal that's going to be negated. So keep that in mind when building your lineups. Riley, we're doing good here on time, and we're about to round it out. So let's talk about GPP stacks of where you're going to build at. I told you guys, obviously, on the cash standpoint, I'm probably going to look at 3 midfielders, but obviously there's a lot of ways to go. So final thoughts, any stacking options for you?
I think I mentioned my favorite kind of GBP stack would probably be Brentford. I think they might score 2 or 3 goals here, so I'm going to look at that. I think that there should be some good value there. In cash, I'm just probably going to build out the midfielders, the 2 midfielders, and then work around. Obviously, Nico Williams will be there, but I'll leave it at that. My favorite GBP will be Brentford stack.
Love that, man. Yeah. It's like the more and more I'm looking at it, I'm just like, if I really want to go low on stack, it seems like almost like you could go Nottingham Forest here. It's a 4-game slate. But the Brentford stack looks super strong. I'll probably play a Fulham stack just because I believe in what they're doing, and they're playing at home here. So I think that if I can recall, so they played at home against Liverpool and they got a draw. So that tells me enough that they play much better at home. They went on the road against Wolves here. 0-0 tie. They're going to want to get a result here that is not a tie, preferably a win here. So I think Fulham's going to play hard. That's going to be a good game. That's probably going to be the one. If I have to put something on the TV, it's going to be the Fulham Brentford game. Because I like watching Fulham. I think that they're an exciting young team. They're rounding into form, but man, Brentford looks strong this year, especially with what they just did to Manchester United. So yeah, man, that's that kind of rounds it out, guys. Here at yourfielderschoice.com, don't forget free promo right now. Be sure if you're watching on YouTube or any other socials, streaming services, you hit that like and subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. We would much appreciate it. I did make sure to have the Discord link drop there in the chat. You guys can jump into that free Discord. Look at YFC Riley at YFC V12. We are on there as also with the YFC in front of our name. Any of those staff can help you out, get you signed up for only $25. We got NFL right around the corner, college sports, Riley. I know that you're excited about that, obviously. Are you going to be more focused on, college football, NFL, like with the seasons changing? I know you're on soccer, but what's your kind of your secondary?
Yeah, soccer first and foremost, and then I'll be helping out with some college football, college basketball down the road, we also got the U.S. Open tennis, so me and another guy, Duff, will be doing some stuff there. So we got everything covered.
Yeah, I actually had a really good tennis line, and even with the withdrawals the other day, which is crazy. They need to fix that. That's ridiculous.
I don't want to talk about that.
I know. That was a sore subject. I'm sorry I brought it up. But yeah, guys, like I said, we got NFL around the corner. I will be your man in charge there on some of the streams, and we got a full NFL team that's going to contribute, obviously. So there's lots of faces, lots of guys that are going to write, lots of talented people out there. As always, we have MLB still kicking, and I had a great night yesterday, obviously. NFL preseason, I'll continue to cover with some write-ups, and I know we have a slate later on today. But guys, that's it. We're out of time. This is yourfielderschoice.com here with @Riley Pick 345. Check him out on Twitter. Shoot him some questions. Look him up on the free Discord at YFC Sports V12. My name is Adam, guys. We appreciate you. Have a good morning. Finish those cups of coffee. Dig into those EPL lineups, and let's make some money together, guys.
Yep.
Have a good day,
everyone. Bye.